Welcome to the Chasing Cashflow Podcast. My name is Evan Phoenix and I'm your host. This is episode number 3.
We weren't necessarily had a savings ready for this. We had a wedding fund. That was like, all right, well, let's use this. I'll try to build it back, but right now that makes the most sense to use it for this.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Chasing Cashflow Podcast. I hope you all are doing well. Thank you for tuning in. And today we take a deep dive into house hacking. I think this is going to be very beneficial for those just starting in real estate investing and those trying to get into their first house hack. But I also think it's valuable for those seasoned veterans and successful real estate investors already, just because we kind of touch on and go into net worth and network and how they relate to each other and how your network is your net worth. So I think this is going to be a very beneficial show today. We go into how our guest was able to convince his wife into using their wedding fund into actually purchasing their house hack, which is insane. That's a great salesman right there. But yeah, no, super excited. He has a lot to offer, and just tune in. It's going to be great. So, before we get going, I just wanted to let you know that in the show notes, you'll be able to see all the links to this, Chasing Cashflow podcast, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Also, you can sign up for our email list. Just basically, I shoot out emails whenever a podcast is dropped, alerts or updates, and giveaways. So we're going to be doing giveaways very shortly here. And that's the best way to be on the list so that you get the information needed for that. So make sure to do that. It's in the show notes. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Andrew, what's up, man? Welcome to the Chasing Cashflow Podcast. I appreciate you being on today.
Thanks, Evan. Really appreciate it. Super excited.
Yeah, no problem. You ready to talk some real estate?
Always ready to talk real estate.
Well, I have my stay-at-home dog mug with me right now, so I'm ready to go.
Let's do it.
Yeah, but how about we jump right in and talk about how you got into real estate in the first place, and then we can kind of piggyback and go off of there.
Yeah. It's like, I guess kind of like a typical story. Like, you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You get like fascinated with the idea. I feel like I was almost like obsessive with the idea. Like, the kind of life that it can provide you. And so you just do tons of research, listen to all the podcasts, Bigger Pockets obviously being huge. And then finally we got into a position where it was almost like a necessity, where we needed to kind of do some sort of like house hack to move to a new place. And you kind of use the tools that you had obsessively learned and then kind of just jump into it and see what happens and hope for the best.
Yeah, exactly. And you're relatively young to get into real estate. I just want to talk about, so what got you started? Like, was there somebody that came to you and said, hey, read this book? Is it something that you just happened to stumble upon while you were in college? Kind of talk about that. Yeah.
So, I found the book on my own. So I just have this like idea that I just don't want to work for somebody else. I just want to be my own person, do what I want when I want to do it. So obviously when you start searching how to do that realistically, passive income is obviously the way to do it. And one of the number one ways for passive income is real estate. So that's what got me into the BRRRR Pockets, podcast. And then, then you find Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then you start like diving into all of this wealth of knowledge. And then, I started surrounding myself with people that already did real estate investing and, kind of just pick their brain and use kind of their motivations to also motivate myself. And that's kind of how I actually found my first deal, was through one of my, networking buddies who we became really good friends.
Yeah. And I said this on the last podcast, but your network is your net worth. So,
yeah,
I mean, 100%. It seems like, you definitely, you did all the research that you had to do. You met up with people that were in the industry that were successful already, and you picked their brain. You did everything the right things, and they handed you a deal, or not handed you, but they provided a deal, and you took action on it. I also want to talk about real quick, just touch on. So for you listeners that don't know, Andrew and his wife Victoria are close friends with my wife and myself, and so that's why I wanted to bring him on. He has an incredible story about his house hack that we wanted to share, but also wanted to just touch on real quick. How was it like? Did you have to convince Victoria, your wife, to get into the real estate mind? Did you have to, kind of show her the benefits or anything like that to kind of get her interested in it?
Yeah, I actually, so I won't say force because I'm not going to force my wife to do anything. But I encouraged her to read Rich Dad Poor Dad as well, to kind of get that mindset and kind of just, I don't know. I mean, she knows I'm obsessive over numbers. And so she knows that like I spent as much time as I possibly could, doing what I can to make sure that whatever we do turns out to be all right at best. And if not better. So I think she finally came around to the idea of it, but when she saw the triplex for the first time, I can guarantee you that everything that I had done to try to convince her just went out the window. And I think we went back to square one. So then you go into some more convincing.
Exactly. And that's when you start showing the numbers and say, look, it really makes sense.
Yeah,
exactly. I've been in that situation too. But that's awesome. So why don't we just take a look real quick, overall of your portfolio? So what do you have right now? And, I just want to stress to the listeners that, I mean, you're relatively young still. You're 25, right? 25, 26?
26.
Yep, exactly. And just go over your portfolio real quick.
Yeah, so we got our triplex about 2 years ago. And we lived in that one for a little bit, did like the house hack. Ironically enough, shortly after refinancing that one, we came across a short-term rental in Ocean City, Maryland that actually my wife's aunt and uncle were the ones selling it, so it was kind of like a perfect, we might not have been ready for it, but when an opportunity presents itself, you find a way to do it. So we did that, and we just recently moved into our first single family home as a married couple, and the place where we're hopefully going to raise a kid or two, and then this will then become a rental, and we'll keep moving from there.
Yeah. So I mean, just looking at it right now, so that triplex kind of bought you the short-term rental as well as the property that you're in now. So correct. In a way, you could call it the perfect house hack.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like to say that because I don't like to toot my own horn, obviously. But it did turn out pretty well, and I can't be, too upset about that.
Well, that's all right. I'm here to toot your horn. So, well, why don't we jump right into the house hack then? I really want to share this with the listeners. Those people that want to get into house hacking, kind of don't know where to get started. Just stuff like that and kind of your process as you went through it. So first off, kind of want to know, how you built your relationships into finding it. So let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm pretty sure you've heard this, quote as well, but you are the average of the 5 people that you spend your most time with. And so, obviously I want to be the average of really successful people. So, kind of just met some, really the first guy that kind of got me started into most of it. I met at the gym, come to find out he's big into real estate investing. Obviously that's somebody I want to know. So, we're going to be friends. We're going to be, cordial with each other and, hopefully develop some sort of relationship there. And, that's exactly what happened. He had a few friends that I got to meet as well. And, some contractors, just different people that you can get different aspects of real estate and pick their brain. And, you meet real estate agents too, like yourself, pick their brain, especially a really good one like Evan. And then, I don't know. And then, things just fall your way. I mean, my wife and I are firm believers that everything happens for a reason. If something falls into your lap and it works, you make it work, then it was meant to happen. If it doesn't, then, you move on.
Exactly. And so did he, so you obviously told him that you were into real estate and, obviously that is a huge step in getting started in real estate is telling people that you're in real estate, because the more people you tell, obviously the more opportunities there are going to be. So with that being said, so you told him that you're into real estate, you want to get started. So did he start bringing you along? Did he, every time he had a deal that maybe he wasn't, going to go through with, did he end up showing to you? How did you take action as far as that triplex that you end up house hacking? Did he come to you and show it to you? You jumped on the ball. You went there first day. Like, how did that kind of play out?
Yeah. So, I mean, the triplex was an off-market deal that he just had been networking with some people that had a few properties they were going to look into offhand. I think from the beginning, though, he basically brought me into some of the deals he was actually doing just to see the numbers, figure out how it works, I would then bring some, just smaller deals to him that I might be considering, but I ran my numbers, had him run it as well. We would sit down and kind of talk about it. And we did that for, honestly, probably throughout a year, going back and forth, as I'm still trying to learn and listen to podcasts. And then, finally he came across a triplex and he's like, hey, this is not something that I'm, in a position to be doing right now, but I think this is perfect for you in what you're trying to accomplish. And I was like, okay, well, if you have any information on it, send it my way and we'll kind of go from there.
Wow. Okay. That's perfect. And then obviously you went there, you liked it, you bought it. So this was an off market property, in Maryland. And, what was the purchase price?
So purchase price was $320 and then we got, 10,000 closing cost help. One thing that I would definitely not do again, because it was off market and I'm like, I need to save as much money as possible. I'll be my own real estate agent. So I think just to write a contract myself and make sure that everything was good took about a whole week at least. So in the grand scheme of things, probably could have got a better deal. But it was definitely a learning process. So we ended up, securing that for $320 and then, plus 10,000 in closing cost help.
Yeah. So you ended up being your own real estate agent, just purchasing it off market, not really knowing what to do. Did you have any guidance there? And then with the $10,000 in seller help that you end up getting, did you get that through doing your due diligence of inspections, or was that just negotiated from the beginning?
That was negotiated from the beginning because the big deal for me was to use as little out of pocket money of my own as I possibly could. At the time, we weren't necessarily had a savings ready for this. We had a wedding fund. That was like, all right, well, let's use this. I'll try to build it back, but right now that makes the most sense to use it for this. Not really knowing how great it was going to turn out. It was kind of stressful, but, you kind of figure it out as you go. And, so, and I'm sorry, I just went on a tangent. What was the original question here?
No, you're good. So basically I was just saying, through the due diligence, how did you find your way through the due diligence and, just having to purchase this property by yourself as the agent?
Yeah. So lots of research. Anybody who knows me knows that I do a lot of research, but I also, have friends that were, real estate agents. I don't think you and I were friends at the time. So unfortunately I wasn't able to use you. Maybe it would have turned out better if I had.
That's a bummer. No, I'm just kidding.
But I do have a great friend who's, super knowledgeable in real estate. And after I kind of did it myself, I did pass it on to him and say, hey, can you just look over this? Just make sure it's not something that's going to get me in trouble, not something that's, going to backfire. In which he did. And he sent it back and he's like, man, this looks good to go. Sit down with the sellers and see how they take it, which, obviously was super nerve wracking too, because you're not an agent and you're just going to kind of go in here and facilitate the process.
Exactly. And I just want to say that is, that's so important to go to your, sphere of influence and, everyone, try to, whether real estate agent, contractor, or anything like that, reach out. Anything that they can help you with, just build that network. I think that's huge. Also, anytime I want to buy another property, I'm going to call you to talk to my wife because you used a wedding fund to buy a property.
Yeah.
That is incredible. I don't know how you sold that one, but that's awesome.
Yeah. To this day, I still don't know how that one was possible, but it worked.
It worked out, right? It worked out. Everything went well, and you had a beautiful wedding. So
we did.
Yeah. So day one, you purchased this property, right? Day one, what'd you do?
Freaked out. I don't know if I think you saw pictures of what it looked like at the beginning. So, the owner, great guy, just was not a great landlord, kind of let people get away with whatever. Had some Section 8 tenants that were in there, which I'm totally for Section 8, but there's just a little extra, due diligence that you have to do just to, screening right. And he would let people get away with, not necessarily paying rent on time and, having pets, even though there's a no pet policy, just that kind of stuff. So it was, mismanaged and in need of some elbow grease. And so we kind of picked the smaller, so to give the background, I guess it's, 2 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath units, and then 1 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath unit. And so, my fiance and I at the time were like, we'll just live in the smaller one. We'll fix up the other 2 and just kind of go from there. And so we chose the bigger one first. We would spend, every night after work, come home, you're staying there until midnight and you just do it over and over and over again, until finally the one's ready to go. And we got super lucky. So we did all the work ourselves, which obviously saves a ton of money. So, we spent countless nights just trying to figure it out, what, doing flooring ourselves, paint, cleaning, new door frames, new doors. New light fixtures. Everything in there was pretty rough. Nothing structural, thank God, because then we would have had to outsource quite a bit. But all the stuff we could do ourselves, we did. We had a lot of friends and family come over, and we couldn't be thankful enough for all that help that we received.
Yeah. So when before you purchased this, having been your first property, did you kind of come up with a list of items that you wanted to repair and the cost of those items?
I had like a general idea on what things would potentially cost, and I had a budget. Obviously, we went over budget, which is relatively normal.
Exactly.
But I also, when I did my budget, like I had an idea of what things should cost, and I cut some out of that. So most people like add a little bit in for those like unexpected costs. Yeah. But I told myself if I took some out, I would find creative ways to make things work and try to get it closer to that smaller budget.
Yeah.
Instead of being okay with it going over budget. Which I think made a difference, because then that's where you get those like crazy long nights, and instead of being like, oh, I have, $3,000 in the budget left over that I could hire somebody to do this. I'm like, nah, we're already over budget. We're going to do this ourselves. Let's get to work.
Yeah. Well, that's just, as you go through the process, it's your first property. Obviously it was a home run, but you just live and learn. Now, going forward into it, you can add that extra budget in there for, renovations that need to be done. So, okay. So were these units under rented when you purchased it? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think almost every single unit was at $1,200 when we first got there. The 2-bedroom wasn't being rented, so I don't know what he was receiving for that at the time. But yeah, so they were all $1,200. And I think when I did my numbers, and I also reached out to people to kind of get an idea of what they thought rents should be, we were around like the $1,400-1,500 range. So obviously, that's still a lot of meat left on the bone that he was not cashing in on.
Yeah. So when you first purchased it, it was roughly $3,600 in rent. What is it now to date?
To date, so we have one unit that will about to be rented out, and after that one, we're at $4,850.
$4,850. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Okay. That is quite the increase. And I know the market help this, this past year has been absolutely insane, but still, yeah. You got to be in the position you bought at the right time, obviously. That is amazing. So let's move on to, so you purchased it, you fixed up the units, you raised rents. Now you're going into, is it a 6 month waiting period to do the refinance?
Yes. Yeah. So 6 months of payments on the mortgage is what we had to do. So basically, 7 months, 8 months, whatever that ends up being.
Okay.
Yeah. So, we bought it for $320, you get the 10,000 closes. So you're like $310, you have your down payment and everything. I think we ended up putting it was probably 25,000 into it. So my budget was 20, fully anticipating spending 30 if need be, but
yep.
So we ended up somewhere in the middle, which is cool. So 25,000 on the renovations. When we had our appraisal done before closing on the property did appraise for 360. So
oh, wow.
it was at 360. We were buying obviously less than that, so we already had built-in equity, which was awesome.
That's about 40,000 of instant equity.
Yeah, you can't be too upset about that. Yeah. To my surprise, when we did have our appraisal done after everything was over, we got it appraised at 465.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is insane. Okay. So obviously so just to go over the numbers again, you bought it at roughly 320 with 10K in seller credit. So roughly 310, you bought it. It appraised right away for 360, which is $50,000 of instant equity. And now you're saying it appraised for 460.
Yeah, 465.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So you got that number back. So when you were going into it, were you just trying to refinance it into a conventional, or did you know you would have some meat on the bone to take money out?
I was not expecting that much. So really, all I wanted to do was just refinance and pull the money that we put in out, accomplish that, whatever mortgage product that we had to go to do that, I was totally fine. The goal was just to pull the money out. Obviously, when we find out there was a lot more meat on the bone, your options open up a little bit more. And even though they did, we actually didn't end up taking all of the cash we could. The bank that I was going to go with, this was, heart of COVID. They had actually been more restrictive on their, so instead of 80% loan to value, they were at 75%.
Oh, wow.
Which, I have a really good connection with them, so I wanted to stay there. We could have shopped it around and found better, I'm sure. But even at 75%, we were able to pull out what we needed to pay off the debts. You're going to have a lower mortgage, obviously. And then even with refinancing and pulling out the $25K, because we were getting rid of PMI, our, mortgage was lower than what it was when we first started, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. PMI just adds, so much. So for those that don't know, why don't you talk about what PMI is and when do you get rid of that in a loan?
Yeah, it's a pain in the butt. That's what it is. But, private mortgage insurance. So obviously, if you're not able to put down the 20% on a property, the mortgage lender will charge you that. I think ours was somewhere like around like the 350 range. So, it's serviceable, but at the same time, $350 more a month coming to you is way better. So I think, if you get into a conventional loan or a conventional mortgage and you don't have the 20% after what is it? You probably know better than I do. After 22%, it cuts off or.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically Andrew refinanced into a 20%. He had 20% equity basically. Right. So he was able to pull out whatever was left after that. So what was that number when you refinanced? How much money were you able to take out?
It was right at 25,000. So it's exactly what we needed to make it work. And really technically it was a little bit more, but then you include, your costs associated with refinancing. So what we got to ourselves was 25.
Exactly. Okay, great. So you got this, you went through the refinance process, your eyeballs jumped out of your head when you got this appraisal back, and you got the money back. You got the $25,000 left. So you said right after that you found, a short-term rental in Ocean City. Talk about that a little bit. So once you got this money back, right, was the plan to put that away and just, put that in reserves?
Yeah. Well, so as I said, the money was taken from a wedding fund. So yes, the money had to go back to the wedding fund. Otherwise there would have been no wedding.
Oh, jeez.
So yes, that was not even money that we had to do anything with. it's off to the side. That's not ours. We had a little bit of savings because, you look at it, we're living in a place for free. We're collecting the rents. So no, we're not doing bad. But we didn't necessarily have that savings built up to just be like, okay, we're ready to buy a short-term rental. Yeah. So had to get a little creative with it. Talk to my parents. So it's funny how it all works out. And this is why I say everything happens for a reason. My parents had a timeshare in Ocean City that they had hated for years because it was just costing them way too much money. I think it was probably like 2 months before this opportunity came around, they had finally gotten out of the timeshare. And so it came around and I'm like, hey, how about let's get back into a timeshare, but instead you own it this time. And obviously they're like, this is crazy. They're very risk averse people. So, anything that has to do with putting your money into something that you don't know what's going to happen, that's not them. So it took quite a bit of communicating. Spam risk. Took quite a bit of communicating, showing them numbers, and finally, getting them to, I guess, be more open to the idea. And I think in a way, it was also a way for me to give back to them. So we put the property solely under their name so that they can get the tax benefits. Like I said, we didn't have the cash on hand. So they had a 401k that, they hadn't tapped from, and, it was big enough to make that work. So we did borrow from the 401k. We split the cost associated with that and, pay back half and half. And, the plan was to split the profits from the short-term rental 50-50 as well. But they would just have it solely under their name.
Gotcha. So, that you guys are still in a partnership. It's still 50-50. So you guys put in 50% of the cost associated with purchasing the property. And now you're going to reap the benefits of 50% from the short-term rental. Talk a little bit more about the partnership. I think that it was huge that you did this 3-unit house hack to, proof of concept to your parents, saying that, oh, Andrew knows his stuff. Obviously they probably seen that you researched everything, read all these books, but actually doing it is a whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
Just personally, I know my parents took me a little bit more serious after we did our first house hack. So, I think that's huge. So talk a little bit more about how it is partnering with your family. And was there any struggles that you had to overcome with that?
Yeah, honestly, the only struggle was just convincing them. We have a very tight knit family, so it's not like a difficult partnership at all. My parents fully trust me to run it however I want, and they're gonna, it's better than what they could probably do, so they're totally fine with that. We do have a property manager, so that pretty much takes a lot of that headache out. Honestly, we're just open communication. Like, hey, this is going on. This is the solution. I think more or less, I was definitely more communicating what was happening just to let them know, instead of just receiving the information, taking control of the scenario, and then just doing that. It's like, hey, this just happened. This is how I'm going to fix it. Just giving you a heads up. This is, what we got going on.
Over communicate. That's the moral of the story here. And I think that's huge as well. So, okay. So let's dive a little bit into this, on the side here, the short-term rental. So you said you have property management in place. Talk a little bit about the property manager. So I've been told that I personally don't have a short-term rental, but I've been told that their management fees are higher. And obviously there's more turnover, but kind of talk about the profits and how that has been going.
Yeah. So there were probably 3 or 4 property management companies that we were looking into. Didn't just kind of reached out to all of them, did like phone interviews, trying to figure out which one was going to be the best. We actually settled on the cheapest of them, which was a 12%, fee. I think the other ones were ranging around like the 20. One of them was at the 25.
Wow.
I really liked this one that so obviously you like it because 12%, that's great. But it was a small family run business. They had been doing it for a while, but maybe not as much experience or as much of the technology that maybe the other big names had. But in a short-term rental, I kind of wanted that like mom and pop feel, because if I were the one running it myself, that's what I would want. So that's kind of what I was looking for. And it's been great. They're really great people. The downside is that they've actually grown really big now. And so it's kind of hard to get in touch with them. So I think in the future, we're probably going to try to look to do like manage it ourselves, but kind of from like the distance, get all those like automated door locks and all that stuff. So that will probably be the next project we'll see. But I honestly could not complain about the property manager we have now. And
the short-term rentals. So how has that been through COVID and through this past year?
Yeah. So funny enough, I think we were able to get this place because of COVID. They were obviously looking to sell, and yes, we knew who they were, but at the same time, like, you want them to take the best deal they can. They had 3 contracts fall through because people were afraid of COVID. And COVID's not gonna last forever. Sure, it's lasted a little longer than we anticipated, but it's not the end all be all. So I was like, screw it. If we have a bad year because of COVID, but we have a place, like, that's great. Let's do it.
Exactly. And you plan to use this personally as well. So that was kind of your motivation to purchase.
Yeah, and that was kind of another big part of convincing my parents. So it's like, sure, you lost your timeshare that you were going down to the ocean for, but now you have a place that you don't have to pay for. You just go when you want, and you're not paying that $1,000 a week or whatever it is to go enjoy the ocean. You can go down whenever you want.
Exactly. You found the problem that they were having, and you solved it, and it works out perfectly for both of you now. So okay, so you end up purchasing that property. Then you're living in the house hack still. What kind of management in place is that?
Yeah. So I come from a background where I was in hospitality, and so I know that I could do property management myself. But while we were living there, I didn't want the people there knowing. I didn't want those knocks on the door at 2 a.m. or honestly, whenever, just with, the dumb little things that can just be solved with text messages if you're further away. But obviously, if they know you're there, they're just coming knocking on the door. So I didn't want that. I didn't want that for, my wife either. And so we did find a property manager. He was relatively new to the business, which helped. So we were able to get it at 8%, and there were some other fees involved with that. But, 8% for the peace of mind that it's covered. And, these people don't know that I own the place. And, that definitely made for some very interesting, encounters with the tenants, because obviously they're, more willing to share the things they don't like.
Exactly. And, you have to sit there and say, yep, I agree. 100%. Yep.
Yeah. That's, I don't know why they did that. That's so dumb. They should change that. And then magically in a week it's fixed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. So I totally agree with you on this. For those listeners, a little story. So I use the same property manager as Andrew, and the reason I use him is because of Andrew. So my wife and I bought our 4-unit and wanted to, we wanted to manage ourselves to save on the costs, right? And we went in there, we had terrible tenants. All of them had to be evicted. We didn't know what to do. My wife, oh my goodness, she probably, I have so many gray hairs because of that. But anyways, we turned and we were like, you know what? We need a property manager. We hired him. The ease of everything was amazing. He came in, he ran the show. He did everything, got all the tenants out, told us what we needed to do to renovate. And we got everything rented. Everything is turned over. Everything is, top rates right now. So we're super excited about that. And we just think it's huge having a property manager. And Andrew, I don't know if you've been in this experience, but we've told people that we have a property manager while living there, and everyone, honestly, like 90% of them say, why don't you just manage yourself? And, at the point when you have a property that's cash flowing that well, and I know, Andrew, yours is too, when it's cash flowing that well, and just for the ease of mind of having it, taken care of, and everything's going to get done when it needs to be done. So you can focus on finding more deals, or you can focus on, other things. That's the quality of life that we're searching for, So for the people, that are managing now, there's nothing wrong with that. But, for Andrew and I's case, that's just part of our plan and part of what we need, for the quality of life and what we need to do for it. So, I think that's huge. But anyway, so you purchased that short-term rental. You came back, you're living there, you're having it managed. So, it's kind of on autopilot at this point. You're just overviewing, making sure your property manager does everything they need to do. And then you pull out a HELOC, correct?
Yeah. So I guess this was, maybe 6 to 8 months after we refinanced, found out the bank was no longer doing the 75%, but then for the HELOCs, they were doing 80%. It's like, okay, that's still 5%, and 5% on a 465 appraisal. That's a good amount of money. Like, we could use that. So yes, we did. We got the HELOC. The HELOC actually sat for quite some time before we figured out what to do with it. Obviously, market was changing pretty significantly. We were super happy living in the triplex. We were doing little things here and there to the unit that we were living in. Honestly, like, the area that it was in was great. So, we were just really enjoying being there. We weren't super excited to go, or, pressured to go somewhere else. And, the HELOC kind of sat, and now we're in a place you did use that HELOC, and we were able to get a single family home, and, hopefully a family, or, the family home for a little while. And
yeah. So talk about why you decided to. You guys are young. You guys newly married. Obviously, you could have stayed in the triplex for, years. So why did you decide to finally move out and get another property?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of factors. We were looking to start a family. Sure, you can have a family in a triplex. That's plenty of people do it. There's not anything wrong with that. I think because we wanted to create a life outside of there. We wanted to move to a really nice neighborhood. It's actually the neighborhood that I grew up in, so it's pretty cool. But it's just a great area, and if you're raising kids, it's where you want to be. So it also put my wife closer to work, so the commute was a lot less. And you go to the Bigger Pockets Money podcast, and that's one of the expenses that you can cut down on is that travel. And so that was a big motivation factor there too.
Exactly, and exactly. And I think that with you purchasing a single family home, I think that, I'm in the same situation. My wife and I did that too. We house hacked. We move out into a single family home that, eventually we're going to turn into a rental. But it's not that we are trying, we're raising our life of expenses and everything like that. It's not like we're creeping up right now. It's that we have the opportunity to purchase another property, start paying that down. And, I want you to touch on this too, but our 4-unit pays for our single family property. So, when you have that, then, we have 2 properties getting paid down by 4 tenants. So why don't you touch on that and how your triplex helps you with your properties?
Yeah. So it's funny. It very easily, obviously the triplex could pay for where we're at right now. But we're kind of going a different approach. My wife and I have great paying jobs. So, with what we make from our day to day, we can afford the mortgage on the single family. And, that's kind of the approach we're going. It's it actually will make our expenses a little bit more personally, which means we won't spend as much. So, kind of forcefully making yourself not spend as much. And then, the triplex, everything that we get from there is just going into one bank account. And obviously the goal would be to use that to then, buy some more real estate. And I think if we had done it the other way, sure, you kind of get the same outcome in a sense, because we would spend less. But personally, I like the idea of pushing us as a household to not spend as much. And one of the best ways to do that was to just, add that expense onto what we cover instead of what the triplex would cover.
Yeah.
And I think we would have became a little bit more, I think, I get worried that we'd become too comfortable on just receiving that as, income in a sense. And, in the future, that's definitely what will happen. But for right now, I'd rather just build up a bank account and, have money ready to deploy if another deal comes along.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I just want to overview real quick. So you purchased this house hack, you refinanced it, took that money, bought a short-term rental, and then you got a HELOC a couple months later, and then you purchased a single-family house. So with this 3-unit apartment complex, you purchased a short-term rental and a single-family house. So 5 units right there that you got from one deal. And I think that's huge. And that's why I would call this the perfect house hack. But
I love the title.
But I want to touch real quick because you switched jobs while you were in your 3-unit, and I kind of want to touch on that as far as you went to a nice W-2 job into contracting, which was it was a pay cut, and I want to talk about kind of your decision making for that and why you ended up getting out of that.
Yeah. So, a lot of it had to do with the job that I had at the time. Even though it was a good W-2, it was in the healthcare field, and obviously COVID was ramping up, and, it just became my life. It was, 12 hours a day, every single day of the week. It went into Saturdays, and then it would go into Sundays, and, you can't sustain that for very long, and, kind of just wasn't vibing with the company anymore. So, I was in a sense lost on what to do next. And I, through my networking, I knew a guy who was a general contractor, and he actually needed some help. And, I figured what better way? We're in a triplex right now that's paying most of our bills. We don't have, crazy expenses. I can take a pay cut and just take it as a learning experience. And that's exactly what it was. manual labor and definitely hard days. But what I learned from that time period, I wouldn't change for the world. And even though it made it a little bit more stressful on us financially, I'm sure there'll be plenty of periods of time later in life where I'm like, wow, because I did that, we now are able to do this. And I'm looking forward to those moments because it'll make the manual labor worth it.
No, that's the reason why I brought it up. I just wanted to point out that even though you took a pay cut, the everything that you learned and the experiences that you had while doing the manual labor, now moving forward, let's say, there's a structural problem in your home, more times than not, you're gonna be able to fix that. You're not gonna have to pay, thousands of dollars for a contractor, contract it out. So the experiences, everything that you learn from there is going to help you, tenfold when you start buying more properties. And it does need those, larger item fixes. So I think that's huge, as far as just an experience. And for the sake of you living for free and having your bills paid for and then doing that, I think you set yourself up perfectly for that.
The big thing too, I'd like to touch on too is, ultimately down the road, we're going to do some sort of BRRRRs, flips, whatever. And I think one of the things that most people struggle with is obviously the contractors, and what better way to kind of manage contractors than with knowledge from being a contractor yourself. And I think that's going to hopefully pay off, a lot there. And I'm really looking forward to that, having those conversations with the contractors, but not as like an outsider in a sense, like being like, hey, I was there, I know what needs to get done here. Let's work on accomplishing this together.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So let's move on. I kind of want to know right now with that house hack, I kind of want to go with each property, the house hack, then the short-term rental. So right now you said that rents coming in are roughly, what were the rent? 4850. Okay. 4850 coming in. What is your mortgage?
Mortgage, we just had to change insurances, so it went up a little bit. So we're at $2190 right now.
Wow. Okay. So there is a ton of meat on that right there, which is huge. I mean, especially since you bought 2 more properties because of that. So you're obviously cash flowing really well on that property. And then as far as the short-term rental, how is that going? Obviously it's, I don't want to say it's unpredictable, but it's a calculated risk when doing short-term rentals. But as far as what you owe on it and, the average monthly coming in, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
It's kind of still really difficult to figure out, just with COVID. It hasn't been very consistent. People are wanting to go on vacations and then COVID got worse and then, things dropped off pretty significantly. So I don't know if we really had our most consistent year yet to kind of figure out what the final outcome is going to be. But in the grand scheme of things, I mean, it covers the mortgage. We do go down and we use it every once in a while. I mean, I think this last year we used it 3 or 4 times. So you're saving $4,000 or $5,000 for vacations right there.
Yeah.
And we are walking away with a little bit. I think we probably split like $2,000 to $3,000 each this past year, and then left the bank account at a pretty significant amount just in case anything comes up.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I necessarily have it narrowed in yet on what I should expect from it, but I do know that it's working. It's not as great as I would have hoped, but it is working.
Hey, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's not doing as great as you hoped, but still, I mean, with its production, it's still not losing you money. You're
exactly.
You're still in the green, and if anything, you have a property that's getting paid down by short-term renters. So I think that's a huge learning point, that not every deal has to be a home run. You hit a grand slam on your first deal, the house hack, and then you hit a base hit on your short-term rental, and that's 100% fine. You're further than what you would have done if you didn't do anything. So exactly. I think that's a huge step. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's going to help tremendously a ton of listeners get into, because obviously when you first start looking at real estate, trying to house hack, your knees are going to start shaking. It's nerve wracking. It really is. And until you actually do it, then you understand that, look, no matter what, as long as you don't, run your numbers up too high, you're going to be able to get a renter in there. regardless, even if it's lower than what you thought, it's still going to help you with your mortgage. Even if it's a duplex, $1,200 a month payment, and you get someone in there for $400. I mean, that's still the mortgage is going to be still less than if you were to buy a single family home. So I think that's huge there. So moving on, I kind of want to know, so what is your why as far as buying real estate moving forward? What is your why?
Yeah, and I think I touched on it slightly in the beginning. My main goal in life is, early retirement, and not necessarily to the sense that like I'm not working at all, because that's just not really feasible. Plus, like, that's boring. Why wouldn't you? Why would you want to do that? So I just want to get to the point where like I'm not relying on a W-2. I want to have passive income paying my bills, and then you're able to take more risks. And I love investing. I love investing in the stock market too. So it's just another way to diversify and get to that goal of having my time and having a family and being there for my kids whenever I want. They have sports events, even if they have like a weekend sports thing. All right, let's go take a week-long vacation and let's go just hang out. Yeah,
exactly. And I actually saw a quote the other day, and you reminded me of what you just said there. It says that when reaching financial independence, it doesn't mean you stop working, because usually if you got to financial independence, you're hardworking, you're never going to stop working. It's just you can choose what you work on, right. What matters to you, what you work on. So I think that's huge, and that was a great point that you just made. But yeah, I'm 100% with you. I think in the end, it's all about family. It's all about time freedom, time management, and being able to do what you want when you want. So I think that's huge there. So what kind of education has helped you get to the point where you're at today? I mean, obviously, is it books, podcasts, mentorship? Obviously, you had that mentor in the beginning. So touch a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I still use the mentor to this day. I mean, obviously, and he's still learning too, and that's what's great is that if he has learning experience, he can just share it with me directly, and we can grow together in that sense. But yeah, at the beginning, it was just podcasts. I mean, I probably binged the Bigger Pocket podcast for a whole year. I mean, I had an hour-long commute at the time, so it was great. It was perfect. You read some books, and I honestly, like, I needed that base, like, knowledge on, like, how everything works. But just getting into it and doing it, that was the biggest learning experience. I'm sure most people will say that too. And, fully expecting like, yeah, there's going to be some issues. You're going to run into problems. You're not going to do things great, but it's learning. And then, you make those mistakes and you come back the next time and you won't make them the second time.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's huge. Taking action is the biggest learning experience that you can have.
Scary,
I did want to let you know though, there's this really cool podcast. It's called the Chasing Cashflow Podcast. You should really binge that.
I just subscribed. This is exciting.
No, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. And just for everyone that's that's listening to this podcast right now, obviously you're in Maryland right now. If anyone can bring any value to you, what are you looking for right now?
So probably over the next like 8 months to a year, we're really going to focus on debt pay down right now. Yeah. If a deal comes along that's really great, we'll try to take action on it. But I think the main focus is going to be the debt pay down. I want to come from a place of power on the next one, rather than being so scared to make a mistake that it could just crumble the whole thing. That being said, if a deal does come along, then we'll take action. But I think right now is networking. I mean, just getting to hear people's stories and learning from one another, picking each other's brains. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Hopefully there'll be some networking events that we can attend and just make some good friends from it too.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's awesome right there. So moving forward, your goal ultimately, I just want to discuss again, your goal moving forward. So like, let's say 10, 15 years from now, like where are you sitting at? Are you going to chase, you believe, short-term rentals or long-term rentals? Where are you going?
It'll probably be a little bit of both. In the area that I live in, the short-term rentals could be really huge. It's a very big wedding market. And it's a very lengthy wedding season in this area. So it's not necessarily like my short-term rental in Ocean City where you have 3 really great months and everything else is mediocre, or non-existent in some cases during the wintertime. But, we have a good like 8 months where you can get some pretty consistent income. And so I'm going to try to look into that, see if we can find something that makes sense for it. And then, I like long-term rentals too. I mean, if the numbers make sense, then I'm in for it. I mean, commercial buildings, if I have the money to do it and the numbers make sense, I'm there.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, great, Andrew. You've been a great guest here on the Chasing Cashflow podcast. I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your perfect house hack with all the listeners. I think they're going to get a lot of value out of it. I think, a huge proponent of this and your success is networking. And I think that in order to become successful, you have to build a network. And I think that's huge. So thank you again. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and we will be hearing from you, and we're looking forward to see everything that you do.
I appreciate that, Evan. Thank you so much. You've been a great host. So keep it up. I know you're still getting new at this, but that was phenomenal.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. See you.
All right, man. Take care.